So we're going to start at the beginning of your career. You are a Flatiron School alum. So I want to know from you, what were you doing prior to Flatiron School, and what kind of lead me up to where you decided that you needed to make a change in your career?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Hong Kong, and I was never a straight A student at school. I always thought that I felt a lot more comfortable like talking to people and being naturally quite extroverted. Marketing was something that I kind of moved towards. So whenever I completed secondary school, I applied to do a bachelor's degree in marketing and international business development. And I did a couple uh, internships and job experiences and stuff like that. And upon my final year, I did a job experience at a yacht company in the south of France because I went to university in France. And during that 6 month experience, I realized that marketing, for me personally, I wanted to do something that was a little bit different just because after 6 months of doing something kind of similar, I realized that it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted something that perhaps could challenge me a little bit more in terms of being more intellectually stimulating. I wanted to make a change. I felt like when I was working in yacht marketing, I wasn't really making an impact on the world. And I wanted to really push myself. So I didn't really dive right into coding at first. It was kind of like baby steps. And I did some free online coding courses after work on the weekdays and on the weekends just to see and test the waters if it was something that I wanted to do. And I moved to London after that internship finished and was still working in marketing. But in this role in London, it was more e-com, so e-communications. So on top of a regular marketing role, there were a lot of tasks linked to like email. So I was looking at HTML, CSS from time to time. And this made me really realize that actually I'm really interested in coding. And so after a year and a half in that e-communications role, I decided to quit my full-time job and apply at Flatiron School. And yeah, that's basically what happened.
You said that you went from yacht marketing, which I think that's the first time I've ever heard. And I mean, it's not crazy to think, yachts is a business too. They need to market, right? But
Absolutely.
yacht marketing, why coding? Like, there's a bunch of other options to change your career into, but what got you interested in code in particular?
hmm To be honest with you, there are so many different factors, and some of them are just my upbringing. So, for example, growing up, my older brother always played video games, and it got me really intrigued into like video games and like all that kind of stuff. And it seems like it's such a small influence, to be honest with you. It might just seem like something for fun, but it made me so curious and it made me think, wow, like who are these people who built these games? How much work does it take? And then eventually, I never thought at that point still like coding was an option. But then eventually it went to like marketing role and then having that connection and like really seeing, okay, like building emails and websites, like to attract more people to purchase certain products. How do we build these things? And then thinking about, okay, there's actually so much work that goes behind all of that, goes behind all of the apps that we use, all the websites, everything, pretty much. And then it made me think, what if I could be part of that change rather than just using these things without actually having an understanding behind it? It would be so cool. So then that's kind of what led me to coding specifically. And because it just seemed like something that was natural to move towards as I was already working in an e-commerce role that kind of like dealt with websites and stuff and emails and stuff like that.
Yeah. You're the third person, I think, third or fourth maybe, to tell me that video games was a
Mm-hmm.
driver for them, specifically moving
Mm-hmm.
into software engineering. And I always ask them each time someone mentions video games, I have to ask, what were some of your video games that you liked?
Oh man, to be honest with you, I definitely was not of age when I played those video games. I mean, whoever really was. But growing up, like my brother introduced me to like GTA, of course, and like Call of Duty. I love like shooting games and zombie games, like Left 4 Dead, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, Left 4
And I
Dead.
also love like games with like really, really nice graphics and storylines. So like I love The Witcher, all those kind of things. Um, but actually this is like a side note, but I grew up playing so many video games that had like shooting scenes in it. And actually, last year I went on a holiday. Well, it was like a work trip and then plus a weekend. And during that weekend, I actually went to a shooting range in Prague in the Czech Republic. And it was the very first time I shot a gun in real life.
Wow.
And it was really a shocking experience. Like, I think whenever we play video games, this is completely a side note, by the way, but whenever we play video games, we just shoot like from our controller and we don't think that much about it, right? Like
Right.
headshot, blah, 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 blah. But actually, when you feel the impact of a real gun, it's like quite shocking.
Yeah.
So that made me realize video games are completely not realistic, but
Yeah.
anyways.
You know what? That's a great point. It's such a great point, and it's a side, but it's fine. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. That is so interesting because when you mentioned GTA, I thought of the fact that I had been playing, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, GTA 5, pretty much majority of last year. And there was a certain point, I won't describe what I did, but I did. If you know GTA, you know the type of things that you can do in that game.
Absolutely.
And there was a point where I did something in that game and I was like, is this affecting my heart? Like my actual moral compass at this point? Because am I getting desensitized to the idea that this is like, if you did this in real life, I mean, you are a maniac if you do this in real life. Like this is not okay. So I completely understand. I've never been to a gun range, but I'm sure I would have like a similar response if I did.
Yeah, like I was shaking after that. And that never happened to me. Like I could be coding for 10, 12 hours and my hands wouldn't be shaking. Right. But it took just 5 minutes of using like a real gun and it like shook me up for sure.
That's why I gravitate to games like Halo, where it's aliens. So it's a little, I feel a little detached from, I feel like, all right, if I'm Master Chief, I'm just going to say I'm human and these aliens are coming to invade and I'm protecting. You know? So
absolutely. Self-defense.
Yes. And zombies too. Zombies is okay.
And zombies. Yeah.
So coming back to your experience, you decide that you want to learn how to code. You took some, as you mentioned, some sort of one-off experiences to kind of learn how to code, see if it's the right fit for you. And you decide to go to Flatiron School. Now, what goes into that decision? There are a plethora of programs to go to. Why Flatiron?
Yeah. So actually, at that point of deciding what I wanted to do, whether that be apply to a uni course or do like night school or whatever, I actually was really active in attending tech events in London because there are loads happening at the moment. Well, then and still now, I guess. And I attended an event which was held in Flatiron School, which was at WeWork at the time. And it was so nice. I really loved the vibes of the event, the people there, and I spoke with a couple students who were in the middle of a course. And it made me realize that actually, although I've been doing online learning for the past like year or a half or so, I really needed an environment where I was 100% focused. It's kind of like, a full-time job, I guess, where you're learning consistently Monday to Friday and you're surrounded by people who are also going through the same things. I really needed that because for me personally, I find it quite difficult to learn consistently and still have a very high velocity of learning after work, for example. So whenever I was doing my own self-learning, it was mostly a bit more basic kind of levels of coding. It wasn't anything like building a complete project with someone or, learning about really in-depth concepts. So actually, I really like the idea that at Flatiron School, you have a community to talk to. You have people who can answer questions almost immediately. You had like a cohort that you can hang out with, people who know exactly what you're going through. And on top of all of that, there are two other main reasons why Flatiron School is a choice for me. First of all, you all are so great with organizing events and networking and the career side to that, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. That was something that I really appreciated. And secondly, at the time of applying, you were actually offering a scholarship, so like a partial scholarship. And so financially speaking, it just made sense for me to apply to Flatiron School.
Nice. Yeah, we still offer some pretty good scholarships, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though we don't have the money back guarantee and like ISA and stuff like that, I think there's still some really great financing options. So I love that you mentioned that. And it makes me feel a little good that you said the community part, because I've been at Flatiron School for over 3 years, and I actually started out on the community side of things. So like meeting students, meeting students was like a huge part of my role for quite some time. So yeah, I'm happy that you said that. You move into Flatiron School now. Are you doing full time or part time?
You mean whenever I was doing the course?
Yeah, when you're doing the course.
Yeah, it was a full time.
So you're doing this full time, and now this is like your life, because we say 9 to 6, but it's not 9 to 6. You're
all your weekends, all your evenings, all your mornings.
You're working around the clock for 15 weeks, because I think that's like the misconception. People are like, how are you going to get us prepared on a 9 to 6 schedule over 15 weeks? It's like, because we can't actually.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot more than that. So
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say the funny thing is, though, whenever I was working in marketing and doing 9 to 6, the day really dragged on because I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, and I didn't see a purpose and a drive in why I was doing it.
Right.
But when I was doing the engineering course, time flew by so quickly because you're constantly learning new things. You're so excited to try out these new things that you've learned, and you're just like constantly surrounded by other people who are also really driven, people who are ambitious, and it's such a great environment to put yourself in, because it pushes you to become a better version of who you were before. At least in my case, it really did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. Like the people, when people go through the program, who they come in as is not who they leave as. It's actually pretty incredible. So when you transition to doing this full time, now it's not just some part-time thing that you're doing. What does that transition actually feel like to live and breathe this for 15 weeks? You said like it kind of breezes by. Does it feel like the 15 weeks is just gone like that?
Well, to be honest with you, I think the way that the course is broken up into like 3-week sections. Well, when I was doing it, it was broken up into 3-week sections. It really made it seem like it went by quickly because we would go through like one module and then move on to the next. So there wasn't really that much time to be like procrastinating, sitting, waiting for something. And we were all looking forward to the end goal, which is like being able to graduate and then eventually move on to having a role, like a job, right? So I think the transition, not only was it just learning new things in tech, but it really changed the way I organized my time, because time was so precious at that point. I can't just be waking up at like 10 in the morning or, going to bed super late, because I know that the next day I had to be super focused in order to absorb as much information as possible.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the transition, like, as you said, everyone who comes and leaves, they leave with so many other skills as well, on top of just learning how to code. It changes your mindset completely. And like the diversity of the people in my cohort, like it was just so great because I got to learn from so many different people who come from different backgrounds, different cultures. And honestly, that was something that was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
as you reflect back on how you grew in those spaces, would you say that time management was the biggest thing you learned? But how did you, what was like the biggest uh, growth development section of your life that you felt as you sort of you were entering that job market and looking
Mhm.
into, you know, getting that new career in tech?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think for some reason, whenever I was working in marketing and I would apply to jobs, I always felt like, well, I would look at a job description and I feel like I wouldn't really challenge what's on the job description. Like I would just look at what skills I have, what skills I don't have, and then decide whether or not I should apply to a role.
Right.
Whereas I feel like in tech, because especially with the help of the careers team upon like graduation, they really help you understand what skills you have, what skills you don't have. But it's not in a sense that it's discouraging. It's more like, okay, you might not have these skills right now, but actually you have time to go and learn it, to go and like make up that gap and feel confident enough to apply for a role as well. And obviously, yes, imposter syndrome plays a big role in this. And like you get really nervous because it's your first tech role, maybe,
Right.
and you know, it's your first time working in this industry.
Right.
And you might not have that many projects to prove your skill set. But I think it's having that environment of people who are so used to the industry already, people who already have been working in the industry for many, many years, and they give you that reassurance. You don't feel like you're alone. And that's what really made me feel different when applying for tech roles. Even in the initial stages, even before they test any of my tech skills, just talking to hiring managers, to recruiters, I already feel that, you know, boost and that confidence. And you know, knowing how much the industry standard is as well, like by having the data provided to us by the careers team, and also just talking to people within the Flatiron School network and in the tech industry, you kind of understand better like where the benchmark is, like where you sit as well. So yeah.
This is always an interesting question for me because it's one thing to be able to like apply the skills, right? You can sit at your computer and do the technical work, right? But I've admittedly been much more focused and really interested in people's soft skills. So
Mhm.
as a developer, at what point did you start to feel comfortable speaking about your work? Because that's a whole
Mhm.
different ball game when you're a developer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even now, sometimes when I speak up, I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. But obviously, like I had to say it, right? I think it comes with time. And I think definitely coming from a communications background, it helps 100% because I understand from a perspective where I didn't understand the technical terms. Like whenever I was working in e-coms and the developers and stuff would be talking to me, I would have no clue about what they're talking about. So I understand what needs to be communicated and how it can be communicated in a way that's easy to understand for everyone.
Right.
Um, and I always try and have that mindset of making the way I communicate things in an accessible way. So, for
Yeah.
example, not just writing out documentation because sometimes people get distracted and documentation isn't exactly the best way to like communicate something in certain cases. Obviously, it depends on the scenario.
Hmm. Hmm.
But to answer your question, I think it really takes just a lot of practice and also just having that trust and relationship with your colleagues in a sense that understanding how they perceive and understand things and trying to explain what I'm trying to say without offending anyone and making
Right.
it very, very neutral. So
Right.
instead of saying like, oh, I don't agree with what you said was wrong, instead of saying that, perhaps I can be like, oh, actually, there's also another idea that maybe we can compare with, have a
Yeah.
look at the data, the stats, which option is more like faster and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked that question because I always think like the transferable skills are interesting, right? If you worked in communication, you worked in a space where communication was vital,
Mm-hmm.
using that skill set and transferring it over to your dev skills now, super critical and gives you that leg
Absolutely.
up when you're trying to compete in a market full of very, very talented technical developers. So
Mm-hmm.
as you're moving out of the program now and you're dealing with career services, what is that experience with career services like? How do they support you as you are trying to find your first entry level role?
Yeah. So actually, the career services team, my contact kind of came in to my journey like a couple of weeks before graduation happened, just so we can be prepared. They did CV reviews, reviews of our LinkedIn profiles, kind of had a chat with us to discuss what industries we were interested in working with, what kind of team we want to work with, whether we want to work in a startup or more of a larger company environment. So they really take into consideration you as an individual, like what your interests are and where your passion lies. For example, whenever I was doing the course at the time, I was really intrigued by cybersecurity and ethical hacking. And so eventually I worked in a security company. So I think like having someone that you can talk to every week who checks in with you and is available for you to communicate with through Slack is like super handy because again, that's the source of reassurance. You get extra reassurance. And also like, although I didn't get my role directly through the careers team, I thought that the preparation that was provided from the team was really, really helpful. And we did interview preparations. We did like, test calls and things like that for both initial kind of soft skill kind of call and also for more technical like coding skills.
Mm,
So yeah, it made me feel a bit more confident to
nice.
interview.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's really what it's there for, right? To have that
Mhm.
support team because this can be a lonely road to travel trying to, break into tech and get your first tech role, feeling like, maybe people aren't taking you serious because you didn't have the background and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
what are the nerves like when you go into that first interview for that tech position? Like, what are you feeling as you're going in there, and how do you think that you were able to convince the employers that you were the right choice?
Mhm. To be honest with you, I was so nervous. I honestly didn't think they would give me like a second round of interview.
Mm.
But the day that I had my very first interview with the company that I currently work with at Avast, it was actually the day of graduation. So at that
Oh
point, it
wow.
was like, yeah, it was literally that morning was graduation. And then I had my first call that afternoon. And it was like that feeling of just completing something so important to me and being such a high and happy like um environment.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't talk to either, but anyways, being like super happy and excited and then going into that call, actually I think it made things so much better because I knew that I successfully graduated and that all I had to focus on was just getting a job at this point.
Right.
And I think as well because I had all those tech interview like exam sessions and preparation calls and all that kind of stuff. It made me feel so confident to talk to my hiring manager. And on top of that, I think whenever I was looking for companies to apply to, what really mattered to me was that companies would be very obvious in terms of saying that they're hiring, without any like discriminatory
Yeah.
thoughts or anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
companies that were
Mm-hmm.
so encouraging of diversity and inclusion because that's something that matters so much to me.
Yeah.
But on top of that, also companies who we're willing to provide support to junior engineers. So I looked out for that, and I made sure to communicate that to recruiters or the hiring manager. So for example, like, I think it's important to be confident, but I also think it's very important to be honest and not oversell yourself to a level where you can't fulfill those promises. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
I think it's so much more important to be honest and be transparent, because
yep,
everyone starts somewhere, right? Even my hiring manager at the time, when he first started like coding, he obviously didn't know everything either, right? So I
right,
think
right.
a lot of the times we get so nervous about getting a role, we tend to promise and like oversell ourselves and like say things that, oh yeah, I know TypeScript. Oh yeah, I know like React. I've been using React for like 5 years now.
Yeah,
But actually, companies probably prefer it if you were just honest and you are like secure in yourself, and you're okay with like where you are, and you're showing that you're super eager to learn, nonetheless, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. Because I mean, it's actually it's actually a disservice to both people involved to sort of over embellish because I mean, if you say you got 5 years of experience, they're thinking they don't need to necessarily support you in whatever
Mm-hmm.
role you're in. But if you say you're a
Mm-hmm.
junior developer that went to boot camp is looking for their first role, all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
they can now roll out the red carpet for the level of support that you actually need and could actually use in your career moving forward.
Absolutely. And that being said, like, obviously don't undersell yourself either. Like, be
Right.
honest with what you know, right? And like, be confident because you work so hard to get to this point, and there are so many things that you've learned and you can deliver. So yeah, just having that right balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So you've got this new job. Now, what's interesting about changing your career is when you're coding on the side, there's no pressure. When you're
Hmm.
coding at a boot camp, there's a bit more pressure because you paid to be here. It's a full time
Yeah.
course, and your expectation is to get a job.
Hmm.
Now, when you code for work now, you're getting paid to do this now. How does it feel to make that transition to paying to code, now being paid to code? Like, how does that transition feel for you as an entry level developer?
Hmm. To be honest, at the very beginning of starting my first ever role, imposter syndrome hit me so hard.
Mm,
Like, because everyone around me was so much more experienced than I was, and it was like there is no structure anymore to your learning. In terms of, not saying that like the company doesn't provide any training or whatever, not that, but just in a coding school, a coding boot camp, you know exactly what's ahead of you, right? So we know that
right,
there are 15 weeks, 5 modules, and every week we'll learn something, and it's like planned out. You can see it, you pay for it, and you know what you're gonna have at the end of it.
right,
But in a company setting, um, your learning, of course, is based on what you're interested in, but it's also based on the company's needs. So for example, if the company doesn't use React, they use next.js, for example, or they use Angular, your previous experience might not be required in this new role. And actually, I think the great thing about a coding bootcamp is that it really trains you, and Flatiron School really trained me to rethink how I view learning, because the end goal is not to learn it all. It's not to know everything. Like, it really taught me that the mindset that I really had to have was that if I don't know something, it's okay. I can learn it. And there's not ever going to be a point where I know everything. And that's completely okay, because that's why we need a team of people. That's why we need people in tech who focus in different niches, because together we build things together, right? And
right.
so whenever I first moved from a coding bootcamp to an actual job, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to know everything, I have to learn everything in order to deliver, it was more like, okay, so how can I try and fill in the gaps where there are gaps? How can I try and take on small projects in order to build up my confidence, how can I shadow some of my fellow colleagues? How can I do pair programming so that I learn how to solve the same issue with a different solution? Like all these kind of things that really push you to be a good member of your team and to really make sure that you're contributing. So yeah.
That is an excellent point, because the one thing I guess we say it, but I guess we don't say it enough. I'll say with Flatiron School is we teach you how to code, how to do design, data science, cybersecurity, 100%. But the real thing that we're teaching you is how to learn. And once you come to Flatiron School, what you're actually doing is you're kind of making a contract with yourself that from this point on, I am going to be a lifelong learner. I am learning for the rest of my life. And this is going to be the place where I lay the foundation and learn the fundamentals of how to learn difficult material. And once you lay that foundation down, it's my belief that you can pretty much build anything on top of that.
Yeah. 100%.
100%. So let's play hypothetical. If you could do it all over again, rewind the clock, what would you have done anything different? Is there anything that you wish you had done differently? A thing you had wish you had taken advantage of, or just for anyone thinking about joining a boot camp, is there one thing that you're like, watch out for this, make sure to keep this in mind?
So I think the main challenge that I came across, and I know a lot of my peers at Flatiron School also came across, was that whenever we learned something new, we really wanted to just know the whole concept of it, right? Like how it works from start to finish, so that, because that's how traditional learning is like you just have to understand everything, and if you don't understand it means you don't know it and stuff like that, and it makes you feel so anxious if you don't understand it from start to end. But as I said, because tech is such a vast industry covering so many different complex ideas and technologies, it's just impossible to know everything. That's why Google's here, right? Like you can learn as you go along. And I think one thing that I would really say to my past self when I was doing it is that don't feel stressed out or anxious if you don't understand something immediately, especially if you've just read something about it in documentation, or if someone just said something about it and you don't get it, because it will eventually make sense once you put it into practice, once you come across like problems using it, or once you start doing a bit of research into specific areas that you need to know, then it will slowly make sense. And there's no need to get like stressed out about it at the beginning, because it actually makes it even harder to understand it. So that was something that I really struggled with, because I've just never come across something like that before, in school and uni and my previous work experiences. And so, yeah, and it really helps as well to talk to someone about it. Someone in your like cohort, maybe someone who's your teacher, instructor, or one of the like program assistants. Is that what you call it? I can't remember the name for it, but like people who kind of help you.
Oh God, it's slipping my mind right now.
I know,
What
same.
you're
But
talking
they're
about.
basically like your friends, but like
coaches. They're coaches.
Coaches. Thank you. Because I find that people understand concepts in many, many different ways, even if it's the same concept. Yep. So sometimes if you don't understand something, it really helps to like talk to people about it, maybe watch some YouTube videos about it, change your way of learning. As I said, everyone learns differently. Not everyone can absorb information from just reading documentation. So just like adapt your way of learning and be open-minded to it.
The point you made about like people wanting to go deep into particular subjects, but we only have 15 weeks, so we can't stay
Mhm.
on a particular subject is
Mhm.
so real. I call it the curse of curiosity. Like it is a beautiful thing, and it's actually the reason you're here is because you're so
Mhm.
curious. You want to know why, you want to grow, you want to develop. But on the flip side, efficiency. Like
Mhm.
that's really it.
Yeah.
It's about efficiency. So,
Yeah.
we're trying to get you prepared, in and out, 15 weeks. It's going to be
Mhm.
stressful, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
at the end of it, man, is it worth it? Is
Mhm.
it so
Yeah, and
worth
it's
it?
and it's the same in a work environment. For example, if in an agile environment, for example, your product managers might set out like 2 week sprints, right, to do something and to build a feature, for example. Obviously, you can build it the best way anyone in the world has ever built it. You can make it so fast, use so little memory, and like make it perfect. But can you do it in 2 weeks? Like, and is it necessary to do it in 2 weeks? Perhaps they're just doing some A/B testing. Perhaps this is just a feature that will only be hosted in like 4 months. And, so it's really weighing out the opportunity cost. Like, do you really need to know it in so much depth and take so much time to understand it right now? Or do you want to prioritize being able to work on your projects, delivering on time? And then when you have spare time, when you need to, then go deeper into it. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to learn things. Like, I'm not saying that don't go deeper into a topic, but I'm just saying don't put so much stress on yourself if you can't do that right now, just because you're also handling so many other things at the same time.
100% agree about the opportunity cost. Like that makes perfect sense because again, you got to use your time effectively. You
Yeah.
can this, whatever it is that you want to learn and do a deep dive in, can it wait? That's really the
Mm-hmm.
question you need to ask yourself. Can it wait?
Yeah.
Is it urgent
Yeah.
that you learn this right now? Or is it more urgent that you continue on with your learning?
Yeah.
Speaking of continuing on with your learning, at this point in your career, how are you staying relevant? How are you staying up to date with your skills outside of, the normal, challenges of your current role?
Yeah. So actually, I think there's several factors to how I stay up to date. First of all, of course, it's just reading like tech news. So, for example, Wired, TechCrunch, like all those kind of different platforms. And also, another point would be to connect with people. So, I follow so many different people on social media, people who might be working in different countries, different industries of within tech to kind of stay up to date as to what's been happening. And thirdly, I think as well is to collaborate with people who, I mean, it depends. Like you're obviously in the States right now, so collaborate with people who, you can keep in touch with. So for
Yeah.
example, although I work in a cybersecurity company, I have friends in London who work in the AR VR side of things, machine learning, AI, like so many different areas, blockchain, like all that kind of things. And because these are not perhaps areas that I pay super close attention to because it doesn't affect my day to day. But I love having really in depth conversations with them about what's been happening in their side of the industry and what challenges they're facing, what challenges is like are their company or their teams facing so that I can
Yeah.
understand a bit better. And in some ways, even though it's different niches within the tech industry, there are certain challenges that might affect all of us, and there might be certain things that are quite relatable to learn from.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of how I stay up to date. But to be honest with you, outside of tech, I have a lot of different hobbies. And so I personally don't believe in like, oh, once I'm interested in tech, that's the only thing I ever want to surround my entire life with. You know what I mean? Like I do sometimes like, like to do external learning after work or code and like participate in like hackathons and speak at tech events, all that kind of stuff. But I also would never want to just dedicate my entire life to the tech industry. Like, I also make sure that I make time for my family, my friends, for music, for dance, for hanging out with my friends, because I think these are also things that I value a lot in life. So yeah.
I had someone mention to me that walks are very like a hobby for him, right? He goes on walks constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned that going on walks actually supports his tech in his tech career, because he made this connection. It was so weird. He was on this walk and saw this tree and made a connection. Just looking at the tree, he solved a problem that was bugging him in his tech.
That's so funny.
You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
about your hobbies, like maybe you're hanging out with your family, you're dancing, you're doing your music, and all of a sudden an idea gets sparked in your mind that maybe solves a problem that you were dealing with in the company. Maybe
100%.
maybe it's actually to start a new project that you're interested in. And I think it's so, so critical for people to not let their life be consumed by their career, because as much as we speak about hard work, as much as we speak about dedication, as much as we speak about sacrificing, you are not your career, and never should you be, no matter how high you get in your life.
Yeah. And I think as well, maybe this is like traditional thinking. I think a lot of the times people see one thing as their career and that's it, right? Like, a lot of people ask me, so why did you just move from marketing into tech? Like, that, has it changed completely? But actually, not really, because, for example, when I go and speak at events and conferences, that is part of personal branding, which kind of takes marketing skills, right?
Yep.
And I get paid for that. So I think that is also part of my career, and it's also an alternate source of income for me. And then, for example, if I do dance, which is my hobby, and I partake in festivals and like perform, that's also another source of income. And then if I love DJing and playing like the drums, piano, guitar, whatever, and that's also another alternate source of income. And then if I'm interested in cybersecurity, ethical hacking, that's another source of income. Right. So I never really want to view a career as just like one thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in life, if you're so passionate about different areas of your life, and if you're able to, why not monetize that? Because that's a skill that you've worked so hard for. I've invested so much money in dance classes, music classes, buying equipment to DJ, all that kind of stuff. And obviously I initially did it because I liked it a lot and I love doing it. But if you're putting investment into something, why not seek for return on your investments, right? So that's like a concept that I've kind of really been intrigued in. And yeah, it's like a different way of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Janine, this has been fantastic. You dropped a lot of jewels, and I'm hoping that anyone considering going to Flatiron School will listen to this and take a lot of advice from what you've given, and just a lot of jewels from what you've experienced yourself. So as we end the podcast, I always end with this last question, and I never tell people it's coming because I always want to get a genuine response to it. It is, what is a quote that you live by?
So I actually have really bad memory, so I can't directly quote anyone. I'm sorry. But something that I always...
butcher the quote. Just butcher the quote. It's fine.
Okay, I'll butcher the quote. Don't like come at me for it. But I always think in life, instead of viewing things as like a big jump or big leap, just take small incremental steps every single day. So in your coding journey, that might be if you can only sacrifice 30 minutes a day to learn how to code, put in those 30 minutes. Make sure you make the most out of it, because 30 minutes every day really adds up. Rather than just saying, oh, I can't do it because it's just too much work, I'll just wait until another day where I have like a whole day free to do it. Just take small incremental steps, because you'll slowly increase the baseline of, you as an individual. So yeah.
There you go. See, now when you butcher a quote, it becomes yours. So now that's your quote now.
Thank you.
There you go. Janine, thank you for joining the podcast. As usual, if you made it this far, please subscribe, like, comment, share, put it on your family group chat, send it to your dog. Do whatever you need to do to make sure that everyone sees this. This is absolute gold. Thanks again, Janine. I have been your host, Jelani. And with that, we are out.